Hey Anurag, how are you doing today?
Hi, Prasad. I hope you can hear me, and I'm doing really good.
Yes,
Thank you for the invite.
it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. So yeah, why don't you give some background of yourself and introduce yourself to the audience?
Perfect. So my name is Anurag Kale, and I currently work as cloud software architect with a company called as Polestar Cars, and we are an electric vehicle company. And I'm currently based out of Gothenburg in Sweden. I have been in IT industry for about 8.5 years now, and I started my career in 2014 as a PL SQL developer, like you rightfully mentioned, in a typical, let's say, environment in India where you graduate from an engineering college and you are just put in a mass recruitment company and you barely have a chance of basically dictating or even choosing what is the career that you want to take. And that's how I basically ended up in PL SQL in 2014. And yes, I am in Sweden. Somebody
Okay,
asked
so
from Gothenburg, and I'm also uh, I also have the privilege to be called as an AWS Data Hero. I have been in the Heroes program since last year, 2021.
cool. So let's understand your journey of starting from a PL SQL developer to becoming a AWS hero. How did it all started? Like when did you think that you should start your cloud journey? How did you chance upon that?
Brilliant. So again, like I said, when you graduate, I mean, I'm from India, but I'm right now in Sweden. If that is confusing, I moved here a year and a half ago. But 2014, I graduated from an engineering college with a degree in electronics engineering. And as the fate has it in India, there are people who there are companies that come and hire tons of people with just generic engineering experience and train them for certain things. But again, like I said, that you don't get to choose your path. They will just choose the path for you. And that's how I started 2014. Got trained in multiple technologies, Java, PL SQL, Oracle databases. And the first project that I was put into was a heavy mixture of Java, PL SQL, Unix, shell scripting, and all that stuff. Uh, as soon as I got into that particular mix, I would say I quickly realized that if I had to do something different and not be in the same, let's say, and not be in a possibility to do something creative, I realized that I had to do something else and something different. And I stayed back there for a couple of years until this epiphany kind of dawned on me. So I stayed there in my first job for 2 years, and after 2 years, I joined another product-based company, which was let's say they had a unique model of how they wanted to deliver software in 2016. Uh, After some digging, when I looked at how they are operating, I realized that they actually had what we call as a private cloud behind the scenes, and that's how they delivered their SaaS product to tons of, let's say, real estate business management companies in the States, Canada, Middle East. And that's where I first understood or got a glimpse of what cloud can potentially be. Um, Curiosity peaked. A curiosity peaked, and then I just started to dig into looking into what exactly this cloud is. And every time I went on to Twitter, or every time I went on to Google, every time I went on to LinkedIn, all I could see everywhere was AWS. And oh, I think we lost your lights, Prasad. Uh, all I could see was AWS, and that's how I would say my first flavor or first touch to AWS came about. Well, I'll take the cue and perhaps continue and just tell you what happened next. Then I was working in the second company where we had this internal private cloud. It got me in what AWS was and what cloud is, and I then started to look into around internet, found some courses, and took my first bought my
Of
very
course.
first on Udemy, and decided to take the plunge and discover how exactly AWS works. Uh, so now the timings matched, I would say, and there was in our in the local newspaper in Pune, that's where I was based at the time. There was an advertisement which said that a new startup was trying to hire people and set up their first office in Pune. I saw this as a chance to basically get a change in gears, do something, because there was always an hype around startups that if you join a startup, then you get to work on cool things. I joined the start. I took the leap of faith, left my very cushy job at a big,
That
let's say, product company, took the plunge, and then joined the startup. As I joined this startup, in the next couple of days, I realized they told me they just brought me in into the cabin and said, Anurag, we hired an AWS engineer or a cloud engineer, but they have decided to take some other offer. So we don't have any other offer opportunity, but you just have to take care of this job. And that's how I basically started. The very first thing that I did in cloud was actually take my experience as a database developer. I had done a little bit of Java programming, database programming, PL SQL, data management, and just took over and started in cloud. I told them clearly that it'll take me some time to get to that speed, but until the meanwhile, just let me take care of the data side of things, because that is what I was familiar with, and I started with that. During the same time, I came across. I'm sorry, Ashish, did you try to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to check like so
Yeah.
how so cloud was completely new to you. You
Yes.
never used it. So how
No.
how you started? Like what was the first step? Did you learn on your own? Did you join a training? Like you said, Udemy, and that's
Yep.
good. But yeah, any other resources which could help someone in similar role like you are?
I would say my very first experience, although I took Udemy, I did create an AWS account. Back then I had that was the very first time I ever had a credit card, and I was really scared to basically open an account and just get an unexpected bill. But I just took the leap of faith and created an AWS account. And but I was really, really, let's say, really, really skeptical,
Okay.
and really didn't want to do a lot of things because again, first, I mean, very young into the everywhere, very young into the career. I didn't want to take the risk, so I did try certain steps while I followed along the Udemy course, and that Udemy course was from A Cloud Guru, and that was the very first entry point. I did try some stuff, but again, I was very, very skeptical. But when I went into the startup, like we said, they just gave me a greenfield project, and there I didn't have the let's say there I did not have these limitations of what you can try, what you can do, and the very first project that I did in cloud, which is at a real scale, was perhaps working for the startup to develop a database, working an app. And I took the responsibility of designing the database and making the right database choice, data modeling, and all that aspects of data design. The very first service that I started with was AWS RDS with Postgres, and because that was a familiarity, and I also then we realized since soon we did a POC, we checked out at what was going on, and then we started to evaluate if Dynamo could be a better choice for certain of the use cases back then. Due to unfamiliarity, we did not choose the NMODB because it was a very fairly young startup, and that's my first taste of AWS, and the very first project that we did. Again, this was not a fancy app. It was the typical three-tier app with a front end deployed on an EC2 instance, a backend deployed, and then again a Java-based backend deployed on a EC2 instance, and AWS RDS instance in the background. That was the very first project. So this is around
Nice.
2017, 2016, 17, I would say.
Mm-hmm. All right, good. Thank you. That makes sense. And now I think Prasad is back now, so I'll quickly remove myself and let Prasad continue. Prasad, you
Perfect.
there? I think Prasad is having some internet issues as of now.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll continue. So now this, what was the inspiration to become hero, and what can you brief about AWS Hero program, because not everyone may know about it. What was the reason and what was the motivation for you to go for it, and what benefit it has? So maybe a lot of questions in the one question I'm asking. Yeah, but if you
Mm.
could brief us about it.
To be honest, even if you look at the hero program description, if you ask anybody how to become a hero, you'll get an answer even from an AWS source that there is no one prescription, there is no one requirement, there is no single agenda that basically qualifies you to be a hero. So just a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds of introduction of what Heroes program is. It's basically a MVP program, or most valued professional programs, where AWS recognizes people who are using their services in a different manner, or if they are being vocal about it, they are spreading the information about it, or they are basically um, putting some efforts in terms of evangelizing cloud, AWS, open source, or anything in general which generally helps the tech community. So I never applied to be an AWS hero. I was one someday out of the blue, I just got an email that perhaps you could be a good candidate for being an AWS hero. Would you consider being a part of it? But the journey was not that, how do I say, simple. There might be certain things that could have led to it, and I'll just take a couple of minutes to tell you the story behind it, perhaps. So 2017, around the same time when I was started to work for the startup, the AWS community in the city that I was in, that is Pune in India, uh, they were it was dormant, or basically it did not exist as it exists in today's sense. And the very first AWS official meetup started in Pune, and I just said, okay, what do I have to do a Saturday early morning, 9 o'clock? I just woke up and went to that particular meetup. The first meetup was really wonderful. There were a couple of local companies who were doing some fantastic job explaining how they are using different AWS services, and I just went ahead and asked the local SA who was present at that meetup, hey, is there anything I can do to organize these kind of things? Is there any way I can contribute? Can I use this platform to bring more people? I just want to be active. Can you please let me in? So it took, I would say, to be honest, it took pestering a bit. I was continuously bombarding at least a couple of folks to make me a part of it. And then an opportunity came in, and they said that, okay, we need some help. We need volunteers who could run the AWS user group. So July, August 2017, I started becoming an active member of AWS user group. We organized a lot of user groups, meetups, trying to source speakers, then finding places where we can host it and all that stuff. Then I used this particular platform from AWS user groups as my very first place where I gave my I gave my first public talk. And the very first talk that I gave in a room full of 70, 80, or 100 odd folks was a very, very basic talk, which was like the backbone. If you need to deploy a backbone of your company, what are the core services that you should use in AWS? And I only spoke about IAM, EC2, S3, and VPC. That's it. I spoke about 50 minutes on those topics and introduced folks to that. So taking fast forward a couple of years, I was very active in that particular space. I also then volunteered to organize AWS, let's say, community days in India, in Pune, in my town. Then I also put my hand up and said that, okay, is there anything I can do during COVID to do this online edition? And I also took in that. In the same time, I was being very vocal and basically sharing my experiences, how I was using AWS, how I took about learning DynamoDB, and I was mainly active on Twitter, and I was a bit active on, let's say, LinkedIn as well. I also took the opportunity to speak at a few college fests and just to introduce people in engineering in their second last year or third year of engineering, to just tell them what the cloud is and how it works. So I was being vocal, I guess. I wrote a few articles, I wrote a few bits and pieces here and there. I was approached by a few folks who asked me, so can you help me find my way in the cloud? And I kind of did passive mentorship for a couple of folks, and I think these all things culminated. Somebody in AWS saw my contributions. They thought I should be a part of AWS Heroes program. And I think May 2021, I was basically contacted from AWS to be a part of this program.
That's interesting. So persistent always pays off, isn't it?
It does, but I never had, I would say, I never did this because I wanted this title.
I
I
agree.
only did it, I genuinely did it because because I saw that I saw the benefits that I got because I was being part of the meetups, and I was gaining so much by just listening to the people, the way they were using AWS, the way they were designing their systems. I thought maybe I am in a position where I can influence at least people who have less experience than me. Maybe I would not be in a position to help people who have much more experience than me, but at least there was a gap, and I just dialed down the language and made it a little bit, I think, more accessible to people who were in the first few years of their career, and just being vocal there kind of helped.
That makes sense. And let's say somebody comes to you that, hey, I'm very starting new in the cloud. What
Mm.
kind of advice you would give to him or her?
So, new in cloud has multiple facets. I would say there is somebody who is just out of the college, and then that's a very different challenge. There is also different facet in which you already have certain sort of experience in technical things. It could not be, let's say, uh, purely development, but you could be an BA, you could business analyst, you could be an tester, or you could be something else in this organization. So this is a two-faceted answer, I would say. So for anybody who is coming with certain sort of experience, like I had certain background in database development and I understood the database ecosystem very well, I would say use that as your slingshot. Use that particular experience and do the same stuff in AWS. So that brings to the table is you are not, let's say, baffled by the technology that you're trying to produce, but you are just trying to figure out how this technology works in AWS, and then get an understanding of how AWS interprets running this software in AWS for you. Again, this works really well if you have certain sort of experience already, and that's the entry point that I took, and that's the entry point I basically suggested to a lot of people who came to me with a certain sort of experience. So for people who, let's say, like fresh out of the college, and they don't have experience, or they are coming from total non-technical background, I ask them to do a very simple, let's say, first project for themselves. The very first project that I asked them to do was, do you have a website for yourself? That was my question for them. Do you have a page where you can say that this is who I am, this is what I do, and this is what I'm interested in, and this is what I'm producing, or this is what I'm doing apart from work, or these are my skills? Do you have a portfolio on your website, in the form of a website? And that's how I suggested people that, can you use certain tools to produce a static website that can be hosted in AWS, so that you can just tell to the world that your skills are not just on the resume, but there are actual skills, and this is the proof that I have the skills, and you can show certain things to potential recruiter or potential company. So the very first project it should be this small, but it is very impactful because you start to learn a lot of things. So these are the first
Exactly.
steps. Basically, I suggest, again, these are not the end of the world, but this is the entry point. And then you can manifest, and then you can look at, once you learn these things, you can basically uh, change the tracks as per your, let's say, experience or likings of how you want to take your career.
Makes sense. And what do you do to keep yourself updated? Because see, you could start and
Yes.
then maybe reach to a point, and then it somehow happens like we are not like active that more, or we are
Hmm.
not listening to what is happening, and we go
Yep.
into a monotone. So
Yes.
how you take care of that?
I would say, uh, I would say that one way. I mean, I was when I was in early in my career, I used Twitter a lot because there is a big bubble of, let's say, there is a big technology bubble folks that are always active on Twitter, and it's really interesting to hear the kind of use cases that they kind of do on the daily basis. But Twitter can be distracting, so I just delved into the feature called as Twitter lists, and I created lists of people that who were actively talking only about AWS and nothing else. And I never got to my feed. I always went to my list and just to check what people that I really admire and know that they are doing the real things. They keep on what kind of post that they are doing. The other thing that from that particular aspect, I found Forrest Brazil, who kind of made the Cloud Resume Challenge, and that was basically the next version of the portfolio website that I basically uh, told that I would generally ask students to do. That's how I learned about other people who are in the community, and then that's how I learned that okay, there are something called as community days, there is something called as local meetups, there are sometimes online meetups. uh, so I use multiple mechanisms. One is Twitter. The second thing is I try to be active in at least the local user groups that if the city has one, I try to be very active in that. I go to most of the meetups, or at least prioritize most of them. I have been lucky enough that in both the cities that I have been in, Pune and now in Gothenburg in Sweden, both places I had the opportunity to be the organizer rather than just being a participant. So I have organized meetups in both of these, let's say, places. The third thing that I really do is I use the feature from AWS blocks for RSS feeds, and I take those RSS feeds and I subscribe them through a bot in my Slack. So that Slack could be your work Slack, or it could
Hmm.
be your personal Slack, or any of those aspects. So using those as updates, and I put some did very small piece of coding, and I just let's say distributed them into the channels. So if there is a blog post
Exactly. Good
which
point.
tags EC2, then I put it in compute. If there is a
Hmm.
database, then I
That's
put it
nice
in.
one.
Yeah, and then I peruse those channels as per my convenience whenever I get time. The other aspect that I have been lucky with is I've kept myself involved with companies that are doing a lot of work actively in AWS. So work, there are certain aspects that I come across through work. There are certain aspects I come across through people I follow. There are certain aspects I learn through the meetups and conferences, and that's how I basically try to keep up with the space of cloud. I
Makes
would say.
sense. That's a good one. Thanks, Anurag, for sharing all these details. So yeah,
No problem.
for people who are not in the vicinity of a AWS user group, there are online event also. So that is a good way to do socialization, networking, and as you grow into career, you would realize that it is more about networking, and then you learn things, you get referred, you go to next place, or you learn something new. So most of the things work through referral mechanism, so leverage these mechanism. And today's world, technology has made it so easy. You
Yes.
don't have to physically go anywhere, but still you could get connected to the whole world just sitting in your room. So don't be shy. I would say, like people sometimes are
Yeah.
shy that, hey, I don't have anything to put on LinkedIn. Hey, nobody is saying that you have put something wrong. Maybe if you
Yep.
find a good article, just share it. Why not?
Yep.
Let people know that you are active and you are doing something to contribute, or at least learn and share. So that's a good thing. You also learn when you share things, so keep doing that. Thanks, Anurag. Thank you so much.
No
And I'm
problem.
sure people would be reaching out to you on LinkedIn now. And thank you for being here.